For years, the American housing market felt like a runaway freight train. Sellers held all the cards, demanding absurd prices and getting them without hesitation. Bidding wars turned ordinary families into desperate competitors. Offers came in cash, sight unseen, tens of thousands over asking. From 2020 through 2024, homeownership felt like a fantasy reserved for the wealthy or the reckless. But 2026 has rewritten that story completely. The power sellers once wielded is crumbling. Markets that seemed bulletproof are buckling under their own weight. Inventory is piling up. Days on market are stretching into months. And for the first time in half a decade, sellers are the ones making concessions. Price cuts aren't just happening, they're becoming the norm. In certain metros, reductions of $50, even $100,000 are showing up like clockwork. Desperation is creeping into listings that once radiated confidence. Free closing costs, renovated kitchens, seller-paid inspections, every trick in the book just to get someone through the door. The shift isn't subtle, and it's not temporary. We're watching a full market correction unfold in real time. If you've been priced out, frustrated, or simply waiting for the madness to end, this is the moment you've been holding out for. Make sure to subscribe because we're about to break down the top 11 places in America where home sellers are slashing prices hard in 2026. Let's get into it. Number 11, Bozeman, Montana. Bozeman became the darling of the remote work revolution. Nestled against mountains wrapped in wide open sky, it offered an escape from the chaos of urban America. Tech workers, retirees, and outdoor enthusiasts rushed in, treating the town like their personal promised land. Home prices exploded. Properties that sold for $300,000 in 2019 were fetching $800,000 by 2023. Builders scrambled. Investors followed. The frenzy felt unstoppable. But by 2026, that dream has soured. The median home price has dropped roughly 18% in the past year. Listings that used to vanish in days now linger for months. Sellers who held firm at peak pricing are watching their equity evaporate. The problem is straightforward. Bozeman was never built for this kind of population surge. Infrastructure couldn't keep up. Schools became overcrowded. Traffic choked the downtown core. And wages, particularly for locals working service jobs, teachers, or healthcare, never came close to matching the skyrocketing cost of living. Remote workers who drove the boom are now leaving just as fast. Companies calling employees back to the office, inflation squeezing budgets, and the realization that Montana winters are long and isolating have all contributed to the exodus. Investors who bought rental properties hoping for steady cash flow are instead facing vacancies and few returns. Homes in subdivisions on the outskirts, developments that sold out during the frenzy, are now sitting empty with price cuts stacking up every few weeks. Even luxury properties with acreage and mountain views are struggling. Sellers are throwing in furniture, offering lease-to-own terms, anything to move inventory. Bozeman's correction is a painful reminder that hype alone can't sustain a housing market. When the fundamentals don't support the prices, gravity eventually takes over. Number 10. Boise, Idaho. Boise's story runs parallel to Bozeman, but on a much larger scale. It became the poster child for pandemic-era migration. Californians, Washingtonians, Oregonians all fled West Coast prices and landed in Idaho's capital. The influx was staggering. Home prices nearly doubled in less than 3 years. Builders raced to keep pace, throwing up subdivisions across Meridian, Eagle, and Nampa. For a moment, Boise felt invincible. But 2026 has delivered a harsh reality check. Home prices have tumbled about 16% year over year. Days on market have tripled. Sellers are slashing asking prices by $30,000, $40,000, even $60,000. Open houses that once drew crowds now sit quiet. The issue is twofold: oversupply and evaporating demand. Developers built thousands of homes aimed at out-of-state buyers with big budgets, but the wave of migration has slowed to a trickle. Remote work policies have tightened. Rising interest rates have crushed buying power, and many who moved to Boise during the boom are realizing the city doesn't offer the job opportunities or amenities they expected. Local wages can't support the inflated prices. Teachers, nurses, and retail workers have been priced out of the market entirely. Investors who purchased rental properties are stuck with high mortgages and tenants demanding lower rents. Foreclosures are starting to tick upward. Short-term rental owners are dumping properties as tourism fails to deliver the returns they anticipated. Even new construction is sitting unsold. Builders offering incentives like paid closing costs, rate buydowns, and upgraded appliances still can't move inventory. Entire streets and new developments remain dark at night, a ghostly reminder of speculation gone wrong. Boise isn't collapsing overnight, but the correction is unmistakable. The city that symbolized opportunity and affordability is now a cautionary tale about what happens when growth outpaces reality. Number 9. Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville spent the last decade riding a wave of hype. Music City wasn't just a tourist destination anymore. It became a relocation hotspot. Young professionals, corporate relocations, and retirees poured in. The honky-tonks stayed packed, and the housing market went vertical. Prices climbed 30, 40, 50% in select neighborhoods. Developers couldn't build fast enough. But in 2026, the music has stopped. Home prices have dropped around 14%. Listings are piling up across Davidson, Williamson, and Rutherford counties. Sellers who were once fielding multiple offers are now sitting through empty open houses, wondering what went wrong. The influx that fueled Nashville's rise has plateaued. Companies that relocated headquarters are scaling back or reconsidering their footprint. The cost of living, once Nashville's biggest selling point compared to coastal cities, has risen so sharply that the city no longer feels like a bargain. Property taxes have surged, traffic has become unbearable, and the charm that once made Nashville special is being swallowed by endless construction and chain developments. Buyers are pulling back. Many who stretched their budgets during low interest rate years are now trapped, unable to sell without taking a loss. Investors who scooped up properties in East Nashville, Germantown, and the Gulch are facing vacancies and negative cash flow. The short-term rental market, once a gold mine, is oversaturated. Tourists are still visiting, but they're not spending like they used to. Lower-priced Airbnbs are flooding the market, squeezing margins for everyone. Builders are slowing projects, permits are down, and the cranes that used to define the skyline are disappearing. Sellers are getting creative, offering to cover repairs including appliances, even paying buyers closing costs. But even with aggressive cuts, homes are sitting. Nashville's correction isn't just about numbers. It's about a city that grew too fast, priced out its own residents, and lost the authenticity that made it attractive in the first place. In 2026, the encore isn't coming. Number 8. Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix has been a Sunbelt darling for years, but the desert heat isn't the only thing rising. By 2024, the metro was drowning in new construction. Developers built tens of thousands of homes, convinced that migration from California and the Midwest would never stop. But in 2026, that bet is unraveling. Home prices have fallen roughly 13%. Inventory has surged to levels not seen since the 2008 crash. Sellers are slashing prices across Chandler, Gilbert, Scottsdale, and Mesa. Properties that sat at $700,000 are now listed at $590,000, then $550,000, then lower still. The problem is a brutal combination of oversupply and weakening demand. Migration has slowed dramatically. Rising home insurance costs, driven by extreme heat and climate concerns, are spooking buyers. Water scarcity is no longer a distant worry. It's a present-day reality affecting property values. And the jobs that lured people to Phoenix, especially in tech and logistics, are contracting. Layoffs and hiring freezes have gutted buyer confidence. Investors who piled into single-family rentals during the boom are now underwater. Many are selling at a loss just to escape mounting expenses. New communities on the outskirts, developments marketed as master-planned paradises, are sitting partially empty. Builders are offering insane incentives. $10,000 toward closing, rate locks, free pools, upgraded flooring, yet buyers remain hesitant. The suburban sprawl that defined Phoenix's growth is now its greatest liability. Commutes are brutal, infrastructure is lagging, and the relentless heat, growing more extreme each year, is making people reconsider whether the desert is worth it. Foreclosures are creeping upward. Sellers who thought they'd ride appreciation forever are facing the reality that markets don't only go up. Phoenix's correction is a stark reminder that building without regard for sustainability, whether environmental or economic, eventually catches up. In 2026, the Valley of the Sun is learning that lesson the hard way. Number 7. Austin, Texas. Austin's fall from grace is one of the most dramatic in the country. The city that crowned itself the next Silicon Valley is now dealing with a tech-fueled implosion. From 2020 to 2023, Austin was unstoppable. Companies like Tesla and Oracle relocated. Venture capital poured in. Home prices rocketed upward, and the city's cool factor reached a fever pitch. But by 2026, the party is over. Home prices have dropped about 15%. Luxury developments in areas like downtown, East Austin, and the Domain are sitting unsold. Sellers are cutting prices by $100,000 or more, and still, buyers aren't biting. The tech layoffs that started in 2023 haven't stopped. Meta, Amazon, Google, all the giants that drove Austin's boom have retrenched. The high-income workers who could afford seven-figure homes are gone. What's left is a market badly out of balance. Developers built for the top tier, assuming endless demand. But the median Austin resident, teachers, service workers, local business owners can't afford a $500,000 starter home. Investors are bailing. Those who bought rental properties expecting appreciation are now sitting on negative equity and struggling to find tenants willing to pay peak rents. Property taxes in Texas are brutal, and without rent growth, the math doesn't work. Even short-term rentals, which thrived on SXSW and Formula One crowds, are seeing lower occupancy and shrinking profits. New construction has stalled. Half-finished projects dot the landscape, monuments to optimism that evaporated. Builders are offering massive concessions, but inventory keeps stacking up. Homeowners who bought at the top are trapped, unable to sell without taking devastating losses. The culture that made Austin special, the weirdness, the music, the food scene, is being priced out and replaced by corporate blandness. In 2026, Austin is a city grappling with the consequences of its own hype. The rise was thrilling, the fall is sobering, and the correction is far from over. Number 6. Denver, Colorado. Denver spent years as the mountain metro everyone wanted to move to. Outdoor recreation, a growing job market, and a vibrant cultural scene made it a magnet for millennials and remote workers. Home prices climbed steadily, then sharply. By 2023, Denver felt overheated. In 2026, it's cooling fast. Prices have dropped around 12%. Listings are sitting longer. Sellers are cutting asking prices and throwing in incentives to generate interest. Neighborhoods like Highlands, Rhino, and Park Hill, once red hot, are seeing inventory pile up. The problem is affordability hitting a wall. Wages haven't kept pace with housing costs. The influx of remote workers, which drove demand for years, has slowed. Companies mandating return-to-office policies have pulled workers back to their headquarters. And Colorado's cost of living, from groceries to utilities to car insurance, has become punishing. Buyers are tapped out. Many who stretched during the low-rate era are now stuck, unable to move without losing money. Investors who bet on Denver's endless growth are exiting. Rental properties that once generated solid cash flow are now barely breaking even. Property taxes and insurance have climbed, squeezing margins to nothing. New construction, particularly luxury condos downtown, is struggling. Developers are offering months of free HOA fees, covered closing costs, and price reductions, but units are still sitting. The metro's suburban sprawl, which expanded rapidly during the boom, is now a liability. Commutes are long, infrastructure is strained, and the charm of mountain living loses its appeal when you're stuck in traffic on I-25 for 2 hours a day. Denver's correction isn't a crash, but it's a clear signal that the market overshot. In 2026, The mile-high city is coming back down to earth, and sellers are feeling every foot of the descent. Number 5. Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas has always lived on extremes, and 2026 is no exception. The city that boomed during the pandemic, fueled by California exodus and investor speculation, is now in free fall. Home prices have plummeted roughly 17%. Inventory is at its highest level in over a decade. Sellers are slashing prices across Henderson, Summerlin, and North Las Vegas, desperate to move properties before the market drops further. The foundations of Vegas's boom were shaky from the start. Much of the demand came from investors, not primary home buyers. Short-term rentals multiplied as people bet on tourism staying strong. But tourism has cooled. Conventions aren't drawing the crowds they used to. Casinos are hiring fewer workers, and the gig economy that supports much of the city's workforce is contracting. Investors who bought rental properties are underwater. Many are trying to sell, flooding the market with inventory. Others are facing foreclosure, unable to keep up with mortgages on properties that no longer generate income. Builders who went all in during the boom are stuck with unsold homes. New subdivisions on the outskirts are sitting empty. Developers are offering wild incentives, paid closing costs, rate buydowns, even cashback at closing. But buyer interest remains weak. The city's affordability, once its biggest draw, has eroded. Property taxes and HOA fees have climbed. Insurance costs are rising, and the jobs that attracted people to Vegas aren't paying enough to support home ownership. Vegas's housing market is showing all the signs of 2008 déjà vu: overbuilding, speculative buying, and an economic base that can't support the prices. In 2026, the house isn't winning. Sellers are taking the loss, and the chips are falling fast. Number 4. Tampa, Florida. Tampa's transformation over the past 5 years was remarkable. A sleepy Gulf Coast city turned into a migration magnet. Remote workers, retirees, and investors flooded in, driving home prices to levels that stunned longtime residents. Waterfront properties, suburban developments, downtown condos, everything appreciated at a blistering pace. But in 2026, the tide is going out. Home prices have dropped about 16%. Listings are stacking up in South Tampa, West Chase, and New Tampa. Sellers who expected bidding wars are now fielding lowball offers or no offers at all. The problem is multifaceted. Insurance costs have skyrocketed. Homeowners are paying triple what they did 3 years ago, and in some flood-prone areas, coverage is nearly impossible to find. That's scaring off buyers. Property taxes have surged as well. The affordability that lured people to Florida is vanishing. Climate concerns are no longer abstract. Hurricane season brings real fear, and buyers are factoring that into their decisions. Investors are pulling back. Many who purchased rental properties are selling, either to cut losses or because the cash flow no longer justifies the risk. New construction is slowing. Builders are sitting on inventory they can't move. Communities that marketed themselves as luxury havens are offering massive price cuts and incentives, yet homes remain unsold. Even the suburban sprawl, which expanded rapidly during the boom, is struggling. Commutes are brutal, traffic is a nightmare, and the infrastructure simply can't support the population growth. Tampa's market isn't collapsing overnight, but the correction is real and deepening. Sellers are learning that sunshine and proximity to the beach can't overcome the financial realities of insurance, taxes, and climate risk. In 2026, the Gulf Coast dream is getting a reality check, and it's a harsh one. Number 3. Miami, Florida. Miami's housing market was a spectacle. Fueled by international buyers, crypto wealth, and pandemic refugees, prices went parabolic. Luxury condos in Brickell and Miami Beach sold for record sums. Developers couldn't build fast enough. The city radiated wealth and optimism. But in 2026, that shine has dulled considerably. Home prices have fallen around 18%. Inventory is surging. Sellers are slashing prices, and properties that used to sell in days are now sitting for months. The unraveling is driven by several forces. Insurance costs have exploded. After multiple hurricanes and tightening regulations post-Surfside, premiums have tripled or quadrupled. Some buildings can't even secure coverage, That's killing buyer demand. International buyers, long the backbone of Miami's luxury market, are retreating. Economic instability abroad, combined with Florida's rising costs and climate concerns, has made Miami less attractive. Crypto wealth, which flooded the market during the boom, has evaporated. The speculative frenzy that drove prices has reversed. Investors are exiting. Condos bought as investments are being dumped. Short-term rental operators, who once thrived on tourist demand, are struggling with oversupply and lower occupancy. Buildings are hitting owners with massive special assessments to cover safety upgrades and hurricane damage. Those costs are pushing even wealthy owners to sell. New construction is stalling. Luxury towers that were supposed to define Miami's skyline are sitting partially sold. Developers are offering insane concessions, furnished units, paid HOA fees for years, huge price cuts. But demand has dried up. Miami's market correction is a case study in what happens when speculation, leverage, and external shocks collide. The city still looks stunning, but underneath the gloss, the numbers are ugly. In 2026, sellers are facing a truth they didn't want to believe. Even paradise has limits. Number 2. San Francisco, California. San Francisco's housing market collapse is nothing short of historic. The city that once symbolized wealth and innovation is now a cautionary tale. Home prices have cratered roughly 20% since their peak. Condos in Soma and downtown are selling for hundreds of thousands below asking. Single-family homes in once desirable neighborhoods are sitting unsold for months. Sellers are panicking, and rightfully so. The exodus that began during the pandemic never reversed. Tech workers didn't come back. Remote work stuck. Companies downsized or relocated entirely. The downtown core, once bustling, is now a patchwork of empty offices and closed storefronts. The ripple effect on housing has been devastating. Demand has collapsed. Buyers who remain are lowballing, knowing sellers are desperate. Investors who purchased during the boom are facing catastrophic losses. Many are walking away, letting properties go into foreclosure rather than continue hemorrhaging money. Property taxes and maintenance costs remain sky-high, but rents and sale prices have plummeted. The city's problems go beyond economics. Perceptions of safety, homelessness, and quality of life have driven buyers away. Families who might have considered San Francisco are choosing suburbs or leaving the state entirely. Even wealthy tech executives are relocating to Austin, Miami, or abroad. New construction has frozen. Projects that were greenlit during the boom are now stalled or abandoned. Builders can't secure financing. Buyers aren't interested. And the luxury condos that do exist are sitting empty. Monuments to overconfidence. San Francisco's correction is a once-in-a-generation event. The market that defined American real estate excess is now its greatest collapse. Sellers aren't just slashing prices. They're accepting the reality that their properties may never recover the value they once held. In 2026, the city by the Bay is learning a painful lesson. No market is immune to gravity. Number 1. San Jose, California. At the very top of the list sits San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley and the epicenter of the tech-driven housing collapse. For decades, San Jose's housing market felt untouchable. Prices climbed relentlessly, fueled by an endless stream of high-paid engineers and tech executives. Homes routinely sold for double or triple their fair value. Bidding wars were brutal, but in 2026, that illusion has shattered completely. Home prices have plummeted 22%. That's not a typo. Nearly a quarter of home values erased in just over a year. Sellers are slashing prices by $200,000, $300,000, even $500,000. Properties that listed for $2 million are now struggling to get $1.5 million. Open houses are empty, offers are rare, and desperation is setting in. The collapse is rooted in tech's unraveling. Mass layoffs at Google, Apple, Meta, and countless startups have gutted the buyer pool. The workers who could afford San Jose's insane prices are gone, either laid off or relocated. Remote work has made Silicon Valley's proximity pointless. Why pay $3 million for a modest home when you can work from anywhere? Investors and foreign buyers, who propped up the market for years, have vanished. The risk-reward no longer makes sense. Property taxes are crushing. Maintenance costs are insane, and there's no appreciation in sight. Builders have abandoned projects. Half-finished developments sit frozen, a stark reminder of misplaced optimism. Even completed homes and new subdivisions are sitting unsold despite massive incentives. Foreclosures are rising. Owners who stretched to buy during the peak are underwater and can't afford to stay. The dream of Silicon Valley homeownership, sold as a path to generational wealth, has turned into a financial nightmare for thousands. San Jose's market isn't just correcting, it's imploding. The city that represented the pinnacle of American real estate is now the cautionary tale everyone will study for decades. In 2026, the message is clear: even the mighty fall. And when they do, the landing is brutal. The housing market shift we're witnessing in 2026 isn't just a collection of isolated corrections. It's a nationwide reckoning. For years, speculation, cheap money, and irrational exuberance pushed prices to levels that defied logic. Sellers believed appreciation was infinite. Buyers convinced themselves they had no choice but to pay whatever was asked. But reality has arrived. The 11 markets we've covered are just the beginning. Across the country, sellers are waking up to a new normal where leverage has shifted entirely. Buyers are negotiating, investors are retreating, and the era of easy profits in real estate is over, at least for now. Some of these cities will recover. Others may take a generation. But the lesson is universal. Housing markets built on hype rather than fundamentals will always collapse. If you've been waiting for your moment, if you've been priced out or sidelined, 2026 might be the opening you've been hoping for. But proceed carefully. Falling prices don't always mean opportunity. Sometimes they mean deeper problems ahead. Either way, this is a moment worth paying attention to. The landscape of American real estate is being redrawn right now, and what emerges on the other side will define the market for decades. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what comes next, because this story is far from over.